Well, good morning, everybody. Seems the propaganda machine continues to rage on right here in all countries. Canada, much to talk about today in breaking news. I just finished watching Russia, Belarus. For people who don't chime into any of that or dismiss RT as propaganda news, listen, everybody, that's the live meeting with President of Belarus, Lukashenko, and President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. I don't know how anyone can call something fake propaganda news when it's a live meeting by two presidents. Unless the Western media and Western country leaders are going to say that the interpretation is absolutely wrong. But I can assure you, I have an interpreter who backs all that up, backs everything up, and I can even translate the verbiage into a document. I have that program. I've actually proved that to others around Alberta, just in my own country, my own province, home province, Alberta. I've proved that in the past. I can take Facebooks, I can turn it into text. I can turn around, take the text, and interpret it. Is it a long process, a pain in the butt? Sure, but I can guarantee you what I've published with RT News is all live as it's really happening. I don't see how you can say that's propaganda when it's actual watching viewings as they're happening in those settings translated. It's reporting the news, whether you like what people are saying or not. So we're going to get into a lot today because a lot we wake up to this morning here in Canada. Parliament suspended. Emergency Measures Act. There will be no debates on anything. There's no opposition. There's nothing. Welcome to basically the War Measures Act. One of the most extreme uses of executive power in Canada. Who, contrary to what everybody thinks, has the most executive power, the most ability to corrupt and abuse executive power anywhere around us within 5,000 square miles. Did you get that, everybody? We're more corrupt than Russia itself. That's Canada. It's the illusion of democracy. As stated before, with the convoy, the protests, the border closures in Surrey, Coutts, and absolutely Windsor, I've went online. I've taken all the camera angles. I even have people who live in some of these areas taking pictures. The borders were wiped out. It was easily done in justifying the Emergency Measures Act, as 13 people were charged from just Coutts, Alberta alone. And conveniently, within hours, the same thing in Windsor. Truckloads of guns and armed civilians. Everybody. Who in their right mind in Canada, after all the abuses of gun rights, would be placing their guns out of storage or out of their own possession into big trucks to have them seized by government? Who in their right mind would do that? Now, the government's used that. It put forward the Emergency Measures Act. Well, guess what now? Now it's Coastal GasLink, the RCMP. Just days later, Coastal GasLink by the radical left, terrorist unseated, largely wet sweating, all wet sweating territory. Somehow the GasLink's been attacked now. So radical left, radical right, doesn't matter what narrative you are, if you were pro-convoy or not convoy, somehow now acts of terrorism right across Canada to justify the extreme force of RCMP. Our parliament's suspended. If you think there's any democracy in Canada right now, there's none. There's none. The government is going to use this opportunity under the Emergency Measures Act to literally beat the shit out of every single kind of operation in opposition across Canada. Gross violation of human rights. Absolute. That's what the Emergency Measures Act is. And the way it's being used is contrary to law on the world stage, as stated by Russia today. For anyone who didn't bother watching the Belarus-Russian communication today, people, international law and gross violations of international law. That is Canada, the worst of the worst today. As we're all overshadowed by Ukraine and USA and Russia go tit for tat. As always, when Russia and USA go toe to toe in monumental times in history, guess who is the first to implement the Emergency Measures Act? Check out your history, as I've already disclosed to both Democrats, Republicans, and the Russian government themselves. I've done that. I've proven that Canada, regardless of whoever is your Prime Minister, of course 3 of those times have been Liberal, but in those times, that's the first thing Canada does, is rip out the Emergency Measures Act. Was the War Measures Act, regardless of war. Regardless of war, meaning even if there's no war worldwide or war at home, the government rolls it out when USA and Russia are distracted. When they're at each other's throats the hardest, your government takes that opportunity in all of our history to remove absolutely all and every resemblance of international law and human rights. The RCMP, designed in municipal, provincial, federal, and military overlap, as they always have been. They are the first Nazi design, long before Nazi Germany, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't radical. This isn't fringe. This is real history. Verifiable, credible, logged by so many nations in the world, and absolutely by world academia. You can't find a credible published expert in law, in history, in political science to come forward in their name to justify anything the government supposes or tries to say, or media would try to say that anything I'm telling you isn't truthful 100%. You can't find anyone. Now, maybe a Canadian government for hire academic, but when you go out to the world stage, any country in the world, that means you can go to Russia, Ukraine, USA, and you won't find an academic who will disagree with me. They're going to say, yes, he's 100% correct. Here's the publications. That's worldwide. We can go through the African countries. If anyone bothered to watch the UNSC yesterday, we watched Ukraine get mandated a return to Minsk. What does that mean, Canadians? And if there's Americans watching, it means America is not a part of the European Union. They have no say over the Minsk agreements, but as a UNSC, all binding world powers, they voted that through in 2015. Yesterday, Ukraine and their president were mandated to return to the Minsk agreements. European contract crafted by European for all members of the European Union. Brexit's not in the UK is not in the European Union anymore. Brexit. They're out. That was their choice, everybody. They don't have any say in what happens in Europe and over Europe policy anymore. Russia's there, France is there, and that's it. USA does not have a seat in the European Union. And why is that, everybody? Because the laws of America, the Constitution of America, cannot allow any president to take them into it. You can't even host a vote to do that because it's 100% against the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, presidents with executive power, we have a Joe Biden who's returned to 1991 George Bush foreign policy on unitary Ukraine, which is contrary to the Constitution of the United States of America. Again, it's also contrary to the 50 states of the United States of America. 100%. You can't find an American academic to come forward to justify anything that Joe Biden's doing right now. Do you think they want to be painted as anti-American? They won't do it. Not a Democrat, not a Republican alike. This is corruption of the executive. I hear from people all over the place in many social media groups, especially here in Canada. This has to go like this. We gotta do this, we gotta do that. Government's good, they mean well. Your government is the problem. They're the problem on the world stage. Canada leads the NWO. Politicians fill their fat pockets. Which brings me to Pierre. I'm going to try and say this right, because I'm getting a lot of messages from French Canadians speaking saying you're not. Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre. I hope I've said that correctly. Pierre Poilievre can't win an election if called tomorrow, even if he was leading CPC. He hasn't made any major grounds, hardly any, none whatsoever. Trudeau would win almost entirely exactly what he won against Aaron O'Toole if Pierre Poilievre was the leader of CPC tomorrow. Does Poilievre win 1% of the PPC support? Absolutely. Absolutely he does. Is it enough to turn over the Liberal ridings? The answer is no. No. And in fact, we already see new polling change in Quebec. Bloc Québécois gets even more if a vote was held tomorrow. If a vote was held tomorrow, Bloc stands to make major gains. Who loses? Well, NDP. Who gains? Liberals, not CPC. Bloc and Liberals. And in the voting weights around Canada, losing Quebec or Ontario seats is bad jube. No one can win Canada if you can't win Ontario and Quebec. The overwhelming seat numbers are in that favor, even with the new boundary proposals. But again, everybody, we're now in Emergency Measures Act. Parliament's suspended, apparently out in Wet'suwet'en territory, unseated. All of a sudden, somebody's bombing GasLink so that the Emergency Measures Act can give the police power to absolutely devastate the Wet'suwet'en. Because apparently, radical right and radical left automatically want to act out as soon as we're under Emergency Measures Act so that they can be decimated by police with all kinds of superior power, firepower, and absolute abandonment of all human rights. This style of policing hasn't been seen since Nazi Germany.